Soundstripe.
Hello and welcome to this next episode of Compulsive Conversations. I am your host, Harry Wise, and I am today talking with a friend of mine. My friend Scott. He is my sister's boyfriend, and he also struggles with OCD tendencies. He is not diagnosed with OCD, but I spoke to Scott to get a perspective on an everyday person's experiences with OCD, and how one can work with their own OCD, how one can help others around them with OCD, and just a full scape of the daily life of someone with this debilitating illness and how it progresses. So please enjoy the episode. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the podcast, Scott.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. So who are you, and what do you do, and where you?
Okay, well, I'll start with my name. I'm Scott. I am a mechanical engineer as a profession, and I am 31 years old.
Beautiful. So today we're going to be talking about a personal experience with OCD. Someone who doesn't technically have OCD, but has the tendencies and experiences the things that they experience during the day, has rituals, has continuous things that methods they have to do things in, and kind of just a general gist of a person's experience with it. So,
Okay.
we're gonna. Hey, Scott, how do you believe OCD has affected your daily life? You obviously aren't diagnosed, but you have rituals and stuff like that and routines. How do they affect your life?
So I guess, yes, I do have like OCD tendencies. They're not like debilitating to the point where, I need to seek help. But they do, I guess, can affect like my day-to-day life. Just can be like, doing those rituals or whatever can be like, time wasting, I suppose. And, sometimes you just think up these ridiculous scenarios in your head that obviously would never really, I guess, happen. But it's just, it can be tedious, trying to deal with those, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that, if anyone's seen my last episode, how Dr. Shane Curley talked about the doubt disease. You kind of doubt yourself a little bit, and you doubt the potential of a potential thing happening or something, happening. Sure. You kind of work through your head. Are there any specific triggers that intensify anything? Does it, something like, for me, it would be something's not in order. It's not straight. It's not. I count what I eat when I eat.
I wouldn't say I have explicit triggers such as that, but definitely if I'm stressed in my day-to-day life, that can sort of amplify I guess OCD tendency symptoms. And so I guess that's one way I can sort of manage that is by managing my day-to-day stress, and that will sort of.
Do you have a method for managing your OCD? I do my little knockwood and my little ritual. I do a ton more rituals than you do. Obviously, I'm diagnosed with OCD. You're not. But do you have any that you manage them with? Do you do?
I think understanding, for example, if I have thoughts in my head, understanding how they would play out, and knowing that it's just ridiculous and it would never happen, kind of thing. For example, just trying to think of an example of one of my tendencies. So, double checking that everything's turned off before I leave the house, and then I'll, have to double check it, triple check it, kind of thing. I guess knowing that like what's the impact of me having to triple check that, like getting that into my head, knowing that, oh well, I don't need to do that, can sort of help, like just understanding the problem and
understanding,
yeah,
more about why you do what you do.
Yeah, like knowing that it's not going to impact
anything that you
can
do
sort
in
of
a day.
help in me not having to do that, double check, triple check.
I can relate with that. I do that all the time. I worry about things all the time. I guess I come from a family of warriors, so we all worry all the time about each other and other things that could happen to whatever.
Yeah.
And we do what we do. So what do you think in a whole does mental health awareness play in you through your understanding for men in particular? What do you see as a man who if you struggled with any mental health issues?
So as in how does like mental health how I see that as like affecting men or definitely it definitely affects men, and I think men are probably not the ones to sort of go out and accept that they have a problem and try and seek help, I suppose. That I guess that it's not just OCD, but like all sort of mental health conditions. Not really
bit of a hard question to ask, isn't it? Yeah, it's a bit of an open-ended question, but I think after the last talk I had with Dr. Shane, if you probably haven't seen you haven't heard my last episode, but he talked a lot about how men have this internal strength to pull back from talking about their issues and just, that old 80s, 70s mentality, especially with older men, of just bottling it up until it, like filling up a Coke bottle until it falls over, until it implodes.
I feel like the younger generation are probably more understanding of mental health issues than comparatively to like older men. And I think it's just a generational thing, like older men, and not against them, but they were probably brought up where you don't have a problem, or you'll be okay, like it, or like just toughen up sort of attitude. And I think that's sort of the issue there with like the older generation, is they don't really
want to talk about their issues at all.
Yeah,
I would know that. My father doesn't want to talk about his issues, but he definitely has OCD, but it's not a topic to talk about later. But how's your experiences with the OCD tendencies? Does it influence your physical health at all? Maybe your life choices? Because I know it definitely affects mine. It definitely affects everything about my life. I struggle with going places, talking to people, experience the world in a whole different way to what one would say a regular, normal person would experience the world. A neurodivergent person would experience the world. How do you think it changes your perception at all, or your physical health, or anything like that? Lifestyle choices?
I don't think it really affects me on that level. I think it's more of it's just a nuisance sort of thing to deal with. I guess the thing that would get me is whether it like affects the people around me, and that would like affect me in return, I suppose, like knowing that it would affect other people. I think
I'm very much the opposite. Mine kind of affects me, although it affects the people around me dramatically. I worry it just affects me in general. Sometimes I don't think about the other people around me as much as I should, even though I've got a really good support basis.
I'd say that's just a basis of like my own anxieties and stuff.
And you struggle with anxiety?
Yeah, on and off. Like I get like anxiety in waves, I suppose. Sometimes it'll be worse some weeks and then better other weeks.
Because OCD is a very, when I talked to Dr. Shane Curley, he said OCD was a very heavy anxiety-based mental health issue, because it's all about the anxiety triggers the OCD, which then triggers it to roll on.
Yeah.
It's basically it's the fear which causes the OCD to trigger and then lock into place. Once it's
Yeah.
the anxiety locks into place, it's locked in.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But what advice would you give? We're going to talk about some advice you would give to men, other men who have been struggling with OCD themselves or they're hesitant to seek help. What would you say? What would you if you had a mate that came up to you and went, no, Scott, I'm struggling with this mental health issue. I'm struggling with OCD. Or I'm struggling with I can't stop checking my clocks. I can't stop checking the doors. I got violent thoughts towards my partner or my kids in my head. What would you do? Or how would you?
I think the first step is to definitely talk to someone about it, and I feel like that's probably the hardest thing to do, because no one wants to know that, except that they have obviously a problem with themselves, whether it be mentally or whatever, but yeah, definitely making that first step's the hardest, and if they can get around that, then everything after that will be a lot easier. If they can seek even a friend that will listen to them or whatever, making that first step is the biggest thing, I reckon.
Have you ever talked to someone about your issues before? Have you kind of?
I mean, amongst my own friend group, we talk about anything and everything, and we're all pretty open about everything, and we know that no one will put someone else down because they've got a mental health issue, and I think that's really good, being able to be in a close friend group where no one will judge you or whatever.
It's definitely changed from the old method.
Yeah,
I definitely know a lot about that, but
yeah.
But do you see? I kind of feel like there's new coping strategies for it for person, instead of people kind of develop new coping strategies rather than instead of seeking help, and then they're not really that effective. Do you kind of feel that as well? Do you have any coping strategies you have, and then do you see any effectiveness in them? Because I kind of do. I know people struggle with, and I feel that people struggle with. Well, my coping strategies is I knock wood, or I check, or I count, or I just go panic mode, or have an anxiety attack.
I think definitely keeping yourself mentally stimulated can help, because you're occupied with something else, and so you're not going to have those thoughts of OCD tendencies. And
overall, how do you feel about resources that are available to men? Do you feel like in the new age there's more resources, or they're just not using them enough?
I definitely think there's the resources out there. I haven't investigated them myself just because I haven't needed to go down that path. There's a lot of stuff on the internet, obviously, but which can be useful, but it can also be not the greatest tool as well, because people can just go down that rabbit hole of chucking in their symptoms on Google, and it doesn't really
which is actually
solve any problems.
If you didn't know, it actually is a OCD tendency and compulsion to. Those with OCD will send, because of the doubt and the anxiety, they will end up going in a Google cyclone, I call it, and they will pretty much just turn themselves into a crazy person. But
as a tool for awareness, it can be useful. You want to understand a little bit more about, this or that. That's fine in that regard. But I still think if you do, need that extra bit of help, then going to see a professional is definitely the way to go. I think, I think that's probably the best approach.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Scott. Sorry, I should say. We are friends. So, but thank you for being on the podcast.
No, that's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That's okay. All good. Well, that's it for the end of episode 2 of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. It's been a joy making this series. We're about 2 episodes deep, and I'm learning so much from it. As per good journalism practice, we should always say mental health services, just in case those who are struggling and listening to this podcast who struggle can get some help. So please do call Lifeline on 13 11 34 if you are really struggling with your OCD or depression or anxiety. Also 1300 22 46 35 is Beyond Blue if you do need help. So please always access those emergency call numbers. They can really make a difference for someone. Also, the mental health triage are a fantastic resource to search out for if you are needing help, and you can reach them on 13 14 65. Thank you.